Hello and welcome back to the AI with Maribel Lopez program. I'm Maribel Lopez. I'm here today at IBM Think 2026 in the lovely city of Boston, Massachusetts, my hometown. Very excited to be back in Boston. And I'm actually super excited to be joined here today with Suzanne Livingston. Suzanne is the VP of Product at Watsonx. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Maribel. And I'm so glad to have you back in Boston, which is my town now.
Yeah, it's been great weather. It's been great content. We've gone to a lot of programs recently. AI is all the talk. It's all the rage. We've had generative. We're moving into agentic. You've had a big program today and yesterday on what's going on with AI. I thought maybe we could get started by talking a little bit, though, about you and which products you have in the portfolio, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about what they do, because sometimes just a level set for people, we want them to understand the terms that we're talking about.
Sure thing. Happy to do that. So as you know, Watsonx is our flagship AI brand. So when you think about all things IBM product and AI, it's Watsonx. Within the Watsonx family, there's Watsonx AI, which is focused on data science and modeling. We also have Watsonx .gov, which is our governance, risk and compliance platform, really targeted at risk officers who are trying to understand all of the programs that they have in their environment and how well they're abiding by guardrails and policies that they've set. And then really where I spend a significant amount of my time and focus, I have the product team for, is Watsonx Orchestrate. That is our orchestration platform. Think of agents, tools, skills. So many companies right now are building out agents for their customer care environments. They're building them out for their own internal usage and trying to drive efficiency and even new revenue from it. And that's really where we've been focused. This past week, what we've been mainly showing is our progression along that journey and how we've matured the product and the product capabilities to go beyond just orchestration and building agents, but actually running them, managing them, evaluating them, optimizing them all at scale, whether they're built with our tools or not. So that's been the focus for the week behind us.
So that gives us a little bit of framing on kind of what Orchestrate does. I want to spend a minute talking about the move from generative AI to agentic AI and how that's evolved in the Watsonx platform. And basically, I think when we talk about orchestration, some of the audience is familiar with it, some of it isn't. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about orchestration and then how that has evolved in your mind from us just building agents to the other parts of the stack that you were talking about.
Sure thing. So probably the simplest and easiest way to think about where we've come on this journey is just think about the last time you chatted with an assistant that was giving you information. And I would say that was our big focus 4 years ago. We want to help you leverage knowledge, RAG, use cases, leverage content, and then be able to have an interaction that's informative. Then we moved one step forward from there. It was a natural evolution. Well, this is great information, but can you actually take the action I'm looking for? Book me the flight. Don't just tell me what flights are there. Hire the employee. Don't just tell me the information about the person. So the next step from that assistant experience was building in the right hooks and integrations into backend systems and be able to pass the right information to those systems to execute these actions. And then it just skyrocketed from there. So a simple action, one of the things we started with, I'll give you a quick example, something like, let's say you and I were working at the same company and I have an employee who I'm going to transfer to you. So I go into my chat and I say, transfer Jane Doe to Maribel. Okay, well, it's going to then look at what are the steps of the process that are required for me to do that for Suzanne. Who is Maribel? What is her organization? Connect all of the dots and make the transfer happen in our backend HR system, no matter what system that is. That was the move from assistance to taking action and doing work. And so that was the next phase for us to go from a informational experience to a action-oriented experience. Then came, well, now I have this transfer an employee, but I also want to add on their performance history and also perhaps what's their development plan for the year ahead, which is stored not in our HR system, that's in something else. For some companies, it's homegrown. For some, they're using a SaaS tool that lives in another environment. It can be anywhere. So now if you really want to orchestrate that whole end-to-end process, you not only need the agent acting on behalf of you, but you also need an orchestrator who's intelligent enough to know in which direction to transfer this conversation and make the next motion happen. We've seen some orchestrator agents that I know for ourselves, like we have one at the highest level of the company that has like likely 40 sub agents that it's trying to decide which to go to. And even from there, there's even further complexity underneath for each of the departments that it represents. So that's really the complexity behind orchestration, which can happen across different hyperscalers. It can happen with on-prem data. It can happen in multiple different systems and clouds. And that's really where we've been focused on from an agentic standpoint.
So one of the things I think is interesting is we moved into generative, and that was a heavy lift for a lot of organizations. And now they actually are excited to move into agentic, right? And they're like, okay, we've started with generative, we're moving through that process, we want to add agentic. A lot of them start by saying, okay, I've got a SaaS provider and they offer me an agent. And so in that world, it is built by them, it's governed by the rules that are part of that SaaS app, it's got the security that's inherent with that. What you were just talking about is where we start to move into the more complex use cases with agentic, right? It's multiple agents. They may be built by you, they may be built by SaaS companies, they may have some kind of hybrid that's in between. So when we think of that, I think that's where the concept of that whole orchestration really comes to life. When you're talking, you talked at this event about a control plane. Can you describe what a control plane would do and why it's important in today's era?
That's what you just brought up is a great example of why we needed to move in the direction of not just building orchestration, but also getting visibility into how the agents are performing, helping us evaluate them so that they have better outcomes, even get to the point where you're optimizing the agent perhaps to pick a model that's more suitable, that's going to use the right amount of tokens to get the job done. And so all of the focus on getting to the end result for the use case is about how many tools, how many interactions can I consume so that I can get to the right outcome. So for the example, that simple example of transfer someone to Maribel, that also bring with it all of the data that is required for the new manager to know about. In order for you to accomplish that, you are having to touch so many different systems, and those systems have, right now, if you were to do that without a control plane, you would have to go and build in policy management on each of those systems for each of those agents. You'd have to build in evaluation for each of them. You'd have to build in observability or take their observability metrics and bring them into a control plane that you view. And so that was a lot on the companies who were adopting these, who were really trying to focus on the business result of the use case. So what we shifted our focus on was not just evaluation at an agent level, not just pulling data and observability data at an agent level, but let's do that for you across all of the agents and tools in your estate, whether they were built with our tools or not. So what we announced this week was the Orchestrate Agent Control Plane. It's a set of capabilities that lets you observe, optimize, also run. You can choose to run the agents on our platform or not, and be able to get visibility into where there's errors that are occurring, where there's changes that could be made to make them operate more efficiently, whether there's cost savings that you could have as a result of making changes to your agent, but having that visibility across the board. And they can live in the SaaS tools, those agents can live in the SaaS tools that you're using, or you can import them into Orchestrate and run them at a different level. That's because so many companies, they've gone from, say, dozens of different agents to hundreds, and they're coming with all of their enterprise applications, and their teams are building them. So they needed a way to see across all of their organizations, agents and agent tools, and set a policy once. So for example, if as an organization we have a no personally identifiable information policy that shouldn't be shared inside of an agent, then be able to detect that, whether that agent was built with our platform or not, and apply that policy consistently throughout all of the tools and agents in the estate.
I think there's been quite a few challenges that organizations are facing, because it sounds great when you're doing one or two, right? They're really manageable, you know where they are, but what you just described is sort of the upcoming problem that people are going to have. Multiple groups building their own agents, having agents come from their SaaS providers. I think we're starting to move into a concept of the agent registry, and agent identity is another thing. So how does Watsonx think about identity, registry, governance? Are these all integrated things? Are they separate things?
Yeah, they have to be integrated. We can't operate without them. So there's a few layers to our control plane. One layer that all of our transactions pass through is our unified gateway. And that unified gateway is, think of it as a model registry. So any of the models that I've made available for my organization to use are registered. MCP server are registered in that gateway. Any other AI tools that I have that I want to bring in, all through a unified gateway that says, here's where the policies live. I understand what the policies are, and now I'm going to apply those policies to all the transactions that run through this gateway. So it can detect, oh, there was a breach of PII. Let me record that and then share that back with the control plane so that you have visibility into that breach, for example, or a failure, or so forth. Our unified gateway level, we also have a set of components that's around evaluations. So you can evaluate your agents to make it more visible where there are cases that the agent may be out of bounds of performance and you want to increase it. So for example, that transfer an employee, maybe it's expecting a particular ID, or it's expecting an email address as like an identifier, but maybe in this case there's a different identifier. And so the evaluation helps us understand if the agent is actually taking the right action with the right information, and if not, it's capturing that as a failure. So that way you can see that there's a change that needs to be made and you're immediately brought to the attention of what needs to change.
I think you're bringing up the range of complexity that can happen when we think about this, because we, as technologists, I think we all start with the excitement around the build, right? We're going to build an agent. These are the tools that we use to build the agent. And then it kind of all goes to heck when you have to operate it.
Yeah. What do you do after the demo?
Yeah, you have to test it, you have to evaluate it, you have to make sure it's permissioned properly, you have to understand what tools it can access. The identity, I think, is also a really different thing. I think we started with this concept of we'll just extend the human identity concept to agents, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, and perhaps not the right thing to do. So I know that you've been working on solutions for that as well. You talk to a lot of customers, and I'm sure that you're trying to shepherd them through this journey, which is actually evolving quite rapidly, right? Because if you go back 6 months ago, we were spending a lot of time just talking about building agents. So when you talk to customers now, what are the things that they still don't quite understand that you try to help shepherd them through as it relates to Orchestrate or anything else in the portfolio?
Yeah, I do think that now what we're seeing is we've invested in building out as many agents as possible, and now we want to trim back the number of agents that we have built because we want reuse and we want them to adhere to the guardrails that we've defined for our organization. And so identifying which are the best agents to continue with and how can you improve them is a huge area of focus for us, and for them too. So part of that is registering, understanding what they are, and then also helping them make decisions on which are the best ones to continue to invest in. I think the discussion has also transitioned from, like you said, build to scale. And so I want to bring on board more departments or more teams or maybe even a higher volume of customers into my customer-facing agents. How do I do that reliably? How do I do that without an impact to latency? How do I do that in a way that doesn't impede the user experience? And so helping guide on, well, are there modifications we can make to the agent structure so that there's fewer calls that it's making, or capturing data in memory, or capturing cache that it can leverage so that it can be more performant and scale. So those are the kinds of discussions that I'm seeing happen that weren't happening back when we were originally working with a client, because their goal was simply to get the agent built and get the transaction to occur. They've piloted, they've done their POCs, now they're scaling it to thousands of users, and so these are the types of problems that are coming up, which are great because the control plane gives them that visibility. We're doing the optimization suggestions for them programmatically, and then we're also sitting down and talking with customers about where they're trying to go and making recommendations as well.
I think this move to, you talked about optimization and you talked about scale. Those are the things that they're nuanced, right? We spend time, we build the agent, but is it the right agent? Is it doing enough? Should it be doing more or less? Does it work for enough people to bother to have the support? Does it cost too much? Because as you mentioned, it was constructed in a way that was inefficient, doesn't use memory well. These are sort of the next level order problems that we get into after we're done saying, wow, we're going to do agents and we've built an agent or two and it's great. So when you think about the future of what, and futures in AI is one of those things that I think we can only do it in 3-month increments. It's a pretty intense time right now. What are the kinds of things that you're working with customers on or thinking about for how we move forward in the agentic AI era?
Yeah, this is a great space because a lot of it is about adoption and making sure that the adoption is tracking according to the goals that the organizations have. And you brought up identity. So one of the things that I'm seeing organizations do is they're treating an agent like an employee. They're hiring it, right? Like there's an amount of value that's associated to the work and output of that agent. Take a salary for that agent. Like, this is what we expect to spend on you, and this is the output we expect to get from you. These are your goals. These are your goals, and you have a manager who's evaluating whether you're meeting those goals. And some of that, of course, is programmatic through evaluations. Some of that is reinforced through those who are overseeing that agent. Like, as an human agent manager, I'm managing maybe a dozen agents for my department, and I want to make sure that they are conforming to the goals. That agent has an identity just like an employee would. It has an ID. Maybe it doesn't have a badge, but it has credentials. And so we track those credentials through the system. What actions is it performing? We'll be able to give it a performance review just like we would an employee. So you're starting to see agents being treated in this way, kind of owned by departments and managers. Say it's a procurement department. So these are the set of agents that they run, that they make available to everybody else in the organization to make their purchases. And if those purchases aren't correct, or if they're not working with the right suppliers, they are responsible for making sure that there's improvements done to those agents. So I see like flocks of agents that are related to departments or customer call centers and care centers or customer support and delivery, all almost treated like they are a human in the environment and being judged like a human in the environment.
I do think this concept of like, how do you evaluate the agent? What was the goal? Are they performing on the goal? But also in the permissioning, we can treat them like humans, but they don't necessarily have all the same permissions that the human would have. Like, we can have more structure around this agent's only allowed to access these tools. It's only allowed to do this specific part of the transaction. And then you can get into more super agents or compound agents or whatever that can do more. But I think it's interesting because when I think about what I have access to as permissions, in my company, I have access to everything. I can do everything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I have a flock of agents that are doing things, what does that agent have access to? And we have to make sure from a security standpoint that we've kind of locked that down the appropriate way to the use case. So, and I know that you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I think when the audience is hearing this or seeing this, it's definitely something that you have to consider. It's like, how do you want to think about agents as digital workers, but you also have to make sure that they're permissioned in certain ways. Like, Maribel might not have access to HR data. In that case, the agent wouldn't. But maybe if she does have access to HR data,
that's right,
then we have to decide, like, what use case is it okay for which agent to have access to this data. So definitely another one of these interesting, nuanced discussions.
And that's an area where it's harder for companies, especially as we talked earlier, there's different agents in different systems, and they're all permissioned differently based on like where the agent is coming from and what it has available to it. So one of the threads we try to provide is an identity and access control across all the different touch points that agent may have. So I may come to a system that I don't have access to, and so the agent responds accordingly. Like, I'm not able to complete that transaction, you're not permissioned for that data. And so that's part of helping us understand, well, what are the use cases that the agent's trying to drive? Is it permissioned properly? Should we make adjustments to that? But we have to be able to set role-based access throughout the whole end-to-end of that agent, not just within the specialized skill that agent is performing, but end-to-end, because like as I said earlier, there could be 40 different agents tied into one, one collaborator or one master agent that has many collaborators. I want to make sure that the outcomes are aligned with what I should have access to and be forthcoming about when it doesn't.
So not everybody is as familiar with how agentic AI works. So how do they think about, does the agent decide what are the agents to talk to? Do they have to script it? Like, how does this differ from things that they've built in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with our tooling, you can build programmatically through our ADK. You can also build in our user experience, and you decide, is this going to be what's the scope of the agent? And then from there, you can very easily add all the elements that you would expect perspective of an agent. I can add different styles. For example, I might have React style for my agent. I may want to have a set of knowledge available. For example, a RAG use case, that data could be uploaded into the agent. It could be referenced elsewhere. I can add other agents. So I can say, these are the collaborator agents I want to add. These are the MCP servers that I want to have available to me. These are the tools that I want to add from those MCP servers. Here are some other tools. Sometimes tools might be references to APIs and systems like that HR system. Right. And so I start to build in what I'm expecting, and then I have a section where I can put in guidelines. And some of those, got to your point earlier, I need to be able to tell the agent in what circumstances it should be performing what actions. The guidelines give you a way of giving more information to the agent. And actually a lot of the tuning comes in writing up the proper guidelines for it so that it knows what to do in different circumstances. So again, if I was doing that transfer I was mentioning earlier, and that transfer came from an employee from a company we acquired, they use a totally different identity system. Guidelines can help point you in the right direction and say, in the event you get something that's expected this way, you can go to this other system, use this other tool, use the tool for our company.
So it doesn't crater because it doesn't know what to do.
Exactly.
It doesn't have access to a tool. I think that's super important. This is a thing with a Maribel Lopez podcast. At some point, I have to mention the word governance, right? It's a thing. So here we are. We've come to that point. And we've discovered that many organizations do not, in fact, have traditional governance. There's definitely research out from our company and others that are somewhere between, 35 to 55% of the companies don't have governance. It strikes me, if you're going to do agentic AI, you need governance. So when you talk to people about that, are you seeing use cases where, how do you do this if you don't already have an existing governance stack?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I guess where I come in from it, I'm seeing the companies who want to invest in governance, and so they come to us, versus those who are running without it, who are definitely going to need some type of governance. So quick and easy way to get started. We allow you to set some controls in the platform. You can have controls.
So your agents don't have to go rogue. They can get sort of like governance light by using something like Watsonx governance, right?
Or even within Orchestrate, there's some controls that you can add. They're not governance oversight, but it's just a simple way to get started. I need to make sure that there's no PII. I want to make sure that there's no credential sharing that's happening within the agent, and just be able to do some simple lockdowns. That's baby steps. Once we get to, I'm an enterprise that wants to see and govern all of my risk and compliance within one overall view, then we can bring in our governance products. They're focused on risk and compliance officers. They give visibility into all the AI projects, but also all the other applications that I have running in my enterprise. And then I can set policies at that level and say, okay, that same policy I said about, not personally identifiable information within the domain of this agent, I actually want that for all of my applications in my environment. And so have that integration so I can see when there's breaches of that control, but then I'm able to do that at a high level. And we also need to be able to consume those into the product as well, so that or into Orchestrate as well, so that we're able to see what are those governance policies that we need to adhere to. But governance also takes it a step further, and we'll start looking at what are the regulations that are out there, and how do I need to modify
big deal with AI, sovereign AI going on now, sovereign cloud.
Exactly.
It's a big deal. Yeah. I want to ask you a final question about the advice that you're giving organizations, but I want to try to break it into two parts. If you're just thinking about moving into Agentic, what would you suggest for people? And then if they've already kind of gone down a little bit and they get deeper and they want something that's a little more, how do I take it to the next level?
The easiest way to get started, we produce a set of pre-built agents, and our partners do too. So we have over 200 agents, 800 tools, already there and waiting for you to use them. So if you go into the Orchestrate catalog, that you'll see them.
There's a catalog.
We had a customer joined me on stage yesterday. He's a HR for Snap Inc. They own Snapchat, and he says the most requested, HR item is vacation planning. So we have an assortment of vacation tools that you can start with. It's a very easy use case. Everybody needs it, but why build it? It's there. It can integrate into your HR system and any other systems that you're using for planning. So start with something like a pre-built agent, like what what we have. And then when you're ready to scale and go to the next level, you may want to add on additional agents or tools that take that use case and broaden it even further across. And so you can either write your own, you can leverage ones that are in the catalog as pre-built, and then start tying them together in a way that works for your use case. Then that's how we get to the next level of scale. So it's super easy. You can get a 30-day free trial if you go to ibm.com/orchestrate and just sign up right from there.
I am so building some agents this week.
Do it. I would love to see them.
I'm going to be home on Thursday. Friday, we're going to be building agents. It's going to be like the new cocktail hour thing. I swear.
love it.
It's great. Suzanne, thank you so much for spending the time to talk to me. I really look forward to seeing what you guys build next. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love it.
been
It was great
lovely.
meeting you.
Thanks
you.
for listening.